Welcome, folks. We are so pleased that you've decided to join us for this all-important, very vital, virtual Urgency of Civility conference. Good morning for most of you. Very good early morning to our friends in Alaska and Hawaii. And good afternoon to those of you who are overseas. We have a safely distanced hive of activity here at our control center in Thousand Oaks, California. I wish to extend a special thank you to Conejo Valley Masonic Lodge for allowing us to use their facilities. You may hear me mention some times throughout these 2 days. I will be citing them in Pacific time, although I will also try to include Eastern time. So those of you in other parts, particularly our Texan friends, well, you will have to figure out your own time zone. We've all spent way too much time behind our screens of late. So I've been soul searching for some of the benefits of yet another virtual session. Among those advantages, this is certainly more accessible than flying across the country or even among countries. We've saved you the commute. We've saved you time. We've saved you money. And I think the best advantage of a virtual conference is the lunch lines are really short. And the food is low carb as well. There are some obvious disadvantages. We miss to a great degree the networking and the camaraderie that we're all able to build at a conference such as this. And we miss meeting in a beautiful facility as we did back in 2019. All that said, we have sought to replicate our being together in person just as much as possible. We will have plenty of opportunities for you to make new connections and reestablish old ones. We all know that the most valuable part of any conference such as this is the conversation that happens during breaks and over meals, and especially over cocktails. Well, we have created such sessions for you, and you don't even have to tip the bartender. Our task is to keep your attention, and we plan to do exactly that. First, through an incredible lineup of top-notch presenters. These visionaries and thought leaders are taking time out of their very busy schedules to share their perspectives for only one reason. They agree that we all need to acquire the skills and build the tools necessary to restore civility in society before it is too late. Second, we have been very deliberate in the structure of these 2 days. And I'll expand on that in just a moment. And finally, we have some fun contests scattered throughout the program, giving you a chance to win some great prizes, including books from several of our presenters. So let me talk for a moment about why this is the Urgency of Civility Conference. Those of you that know me know that we started this civility effort back in 2013. And at that time, I had suggested that the world about us was becoming an increasingly uncivil environment, and that if left unchecked, this might well become a place that we're not willing to leave to our children and our children's children. Reflecting back on these intervening 7 or 8 years, I think we can all agree it's only deteriorated further. 2019, we held the first Urgency of Civility Conference at the George Washington Masonic National Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia. And we agreed at that time that it was going to take all of us paddling in the same direction to try to turn the tide of incivility. And then, of course, came last year's presidential election cycle, where I think we can all agree that incivility saw new heights. So I want you to concentrate for a moment on the title of this conference, The Urgency of Civility. While we knew it was urgent in 2019, it's even more so today. We talk and hear in sound bites. We consistently state that we're seeking common ground, yet our chasms are seemingly so wide that we can't stand to be in the same room with somebody who holds a different opinion from us. One of my careers is that of a lawyer. I don't have to tell you how uncivil that profession is. Several years ago, the state of California incorporated civility pledge in the oath that every new attorney takes. I saw yesterday that West Virginia is considering adding it to their code of ethics for all attorneys. Friends, this isn't something that we should have to mandate. It's something that we've lost the art of civility. We need to get it back. I've had many people tell me that these periods of civility and incivility are merely cyclical. And if we just wait a time with patience, civility will in fact return. To this, I have two concerns. One is, what's the problem with us shortening this negative period if we can? We don't need to be miserable any longer than necessary. My second and bigger fear is that this period of incivility will become so much a part of our moral habit, our moral fabric, and so much of what our younger people learn that it won't be reversible. And if it is, it may take 1 or 2 or longer generations to reverse it. The patient, namely our country, our society, is in critical condition. The good news is, and what this conference is all about, is that there are answers. I've read numerous books on civility, including several written by our presenters at this conference. We have the tools. We know what to do. The question is whether we will do what is necessary to stem the tide. It feels to me that the doors to a civil society are finally cracked open. Our job is to pull that door open wide and run through it. Thus, the urgency. Many of us have been working hard and preparing for this opportunity. Let's not throw away our shot. In a moment, you're going to see a couple of demographic surveys. We would like to know from where you come. We have people, as I said, from all over the place, and we'd like to get an idea as to where you reside. Then after that, we're going to pop up a survey asking for your racial and ethnic identity. And we will look to share this with you during the conference. We have folks from all across North America and, in fact, the world. Now, as we conduct this conference, I'm going to ask a couple of things of you. First, that you stay engaged. Again, I know this is difficult when you're staring at a screen for so long, but we're going to break things up to try to keep your attention. But try to stay engaged. If you have the means, please set aside your cell phone, close down your email programs, and really help to focus on the matter at hand. I'm going to ask that you abide by rules of civility and decorum, as they will be expected and enforced throughout this conference. Now, I am certain that we will disagree on many things during the course of this conference. That's good. But we're going to disagree without becoming disagreeable. This is a nonpartisan, apolitical conference. You're going to hear some things that will have political overtones, ideological overtones, no question about it. But we're going to do all we can to leave that on the sideline. We're going to take you out of your comfort zone. We're going to stretch you, because it's only if we are willing and able to be out of our comfort zone that we can grow and learn. Each of you has made a tremendous investment by attending this conference. I'm an investment professional, so I'm always looking at my ROI, my return on investment. Therefore, I want to make sure you get a good return on your investment. So I ask that you grab a piece of paper, open up a Word doc, whatever works for you, make all the notes you want. But on the front of it, at the top of it, I want you to note 3 things that you're going to take out of these 2 days and implement in your life. Why 3? Studies show that that's as much as the human brain can really focus on. If you're like me, you go to conferences such as this and you walk out with a notebook full of ideas that get shoved in a desk drawer, never to see the light of day again. So I ask that you focus on 3 things that you're going to put to work by the end of our day tomorrow. There's another return on your investment. You're going to hear us talk throughout the conference about certified civil designation. And each one of our attendees is going to be able to get a 50% discount on that. So just park that in the back of your mind. As you learn more about it, if it makes sense, we will give you a special link to join that. We know that you have a lot going on and you may need to step away for a bit during our sessions. The good news is we are recording everything except for our breakouts. So you will be able to come back at your leisure and catch anything you missed, or even view it again for the second or third time if you're so inclined. With that, I have several thank yous, if you will indulge me. First of all, to the steering committee, who has been planning for this event for the better part of 2 years. There's well over a dozen of you folks that have met with us virtually every month, this last few months, weekly, have done just a ton of work behind the scenes. And to each of you, thank you. You are who are making this conference successful. To my producers and engineers here in Thousand Oaks with me, thank you. Each of you have made a tremendous commitment. Some of you were going to bed as I was getting up this morning, but we have plenty of coffee to keep you going. And while the fear of listing any particular person by name risks leaving out some people that do deserve proper recognition as well, there are two folks in particular I have to recognize, and that's Carlos Diaz and Caroline Pavel. You two have worked so hard, so ably. Your creativity, your dedication is what will make this conference a success. So thank you both. Finally, our sponsors. We have several sponsors. You'll be seeing their names come up during the day. Some of them have exhibition booths. Please take the time to thank them because they helped us to be able to keep your costs for this conference low. Okay, let me shift for just a few minutes into how this conference is organized. First of all, we're going to have various presenters. These people have been selected for the type of message and the type of work that they have been doing. They've been put into particular groupings and order because we think that's going to make a lot of sense for you. We'll be hearing from these various presenters, and then we will have panel discussions where we'll have a moderator that will be able to be asking questions of each of these presenters. The good news is you're going to get to participate in that as well. On your screen, you should see a comment zone. You can write out your questions. We have folks that'll be accumulating those. And as we have the ability, we will have our moderator ask those questions of our presenters. Following that, we're going to have breakout sessions. And this is where that interactivity will really be accommodated. So you'll be able to choose which of our presenters for each of those sections you want to listen to. You'll go into a breakout room. This will all be very easy, nothing difficult for you to manage. And you'll be able to pick which of those presenters you want to be in that room with. And you will be able to ask questions of them and communicate with them during those. We will also be asking some surveys throughout. We will have some of these contests going, so please pay attention. We want you to be able to win some of these cool prizes that we have. One of the other things that we're going to be doing, and this is going to be a challenge, so I ask for all of your help, is we're going to be asking you what's important to you based on what you're hearing of these presenters. And we're going to have you prioritize those. And if we're sensing some consensus around these priorities, we will be asking if we want to develop some position statements around these priorities. These position statements are things that we as a conference may want to stand for by the end of the day tomorrow. Now, we may go through this and decide we don't want to stand for anything, or we don't have consensus on it, and that's okay. But we think that this will be some valuable conversations, and we ask you to participate in it. Finally, at the end of each session, formally, we're going to have an informal post-conference session. We'll have Zoom rooms opened up. We'll have 4 different of them set up, and picture this, if you will, as the end of conference cocktail party, where you're standing around and you're making these connections with folks. So we'll have these set up for academia, which is students, teaching faculty, research, another one for politics and government, a third one for those that are involved in activism and leadership, and the 4th one for community efforts. So look forward to that. Alrighty, you should be seeing another survey in just a moment asking you how you're feeling. There's a number of different adjectives here. I want you to check all of those that you're feeling right now. And again, we'll capture and share that later. So what I ask of you is get yourself comfortable while at the same time allowing yourself to be uncomfortable. And take this journey with us. And let's get this party started. We're going to start with some aerobics. Those of you in Hawaii, it's really early, you definitely need it. Those of you on the East Coast, it's about lunchtime, so you need it. Terribly aerobic exercise here. I want all of you to put your hands together like this. All right, I can see you, not all of you are doing it. Put your hands together like this. Now I want you to move a finger up or down. Doesn't matter which direction. How does that feel? Uncomfortable, awkward, and some of you have already gone back to the way you were. Feel that blood pressure go up, that heart rate increase? Terribly aerobic. Why did we do this exercise? I want you to be willing to be uncomfortable as you were when your hands were in that wrong position. That is how we're going to be susceptible to receiving the messages that we have so many great people sharing with us today. Our first session is meant to make you a bit uncomfortable, for it is only when we are rattled from our place of comfort that we become open and susceptible to change. Our first presenter is the incredible Reverend Dr. Sharon Anderson, who is the CEO of KCG Consulting Services, a consulting firm dedicated to helping businesses with strategic planning, training, and funding. Over the past decade, Dr. Anderson has focused her career on building civility in a society that all too often seems tilted toward uncivil speech and actions. And through research and experience, she is developing a proven framework for cultivating a safe and productive culture of civility and respect in all spheres of our lives. She is renowned as a global thought leader in the area of civility and a published author in the subject of civility and the law, with her first article being Still Officers of the Court, Why the First Amendment is No Bar to Challenging Racism, Sexism, and Ethnic Bias in the Legal Profession. This was published in the Georgetown University Law Journal on Legal Ethics. Her new book, Emotional Civility, The New Standard for Global Success, is scheduled to be released very soon. She has dedicated this moment in her career to examining the abandoned value of civil interaction and calls us to action to apply civility as our standard to bring success, peace, and safety to our homes, communities, and nations. As a result, she founded Emotional Civility Day, a national day recognized by the United States National Archives and celebrated on March 6th of each year. Now, I could go through her CV, and it is nothing short of amazing, and frankly, it makes me tired. But there's one thing in particular that I want to mention, and that is that she has been involved with Howard University. And I mention that because that is where our daughter is in the PhD program. Specifically, Dr. Sharon she served as director of the Criminal Justice Clinic and associate professor of law at Howard. She's been with Georgetown, Harvard, etc. In short, Dr. Anderson is obviously an underachiever. So Dr. Anderson, the floor is yours. Please take it away.
Good morning. And Russ, thank you for those warm words and that wonderful introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are tuning in from. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And it is truly, truly, truly an honor to be here with you today. I want to first thank Russ Charvonia and the World Civility Council for embracing me and including me in this very meaningful conference. We all know, based on certainly Russ's introductory remarks, but what we've been experiencing globally over the last year, that there is an urgency here as it relates to civility. So I thank you, Russ, for including me. I thank you for having me. I thank the council for embracing me. And I thank you for allowing me to join you in this effort today and as we continue even after today. I also want to say special thanks to Elliot Thomas, Thomas Spaeth, and Cassandra Donkey of the Institute for Civility and Government, because it is through them that we made this connection. And I do want to also thank Peripheral Media and Carlos and Caroline, because technology is not my thing. So thank you for the work that you've been doing to make sure that all of us as presenters and speakers have the right links and are on point today. It is truly an honor to be part of such an outstanding group of thought leaders and invited to speak about an issue that our world is crying out to give attention to. And that we know is civility. Civility is a concept that has caused much debate in our history, and its meaning, as we know, has left to wide interpretation, ultimately drawing lines in the sand between the best and brightest global leaders. We know that civility has many definitions and interpretations. And as Russ alluded to in the introduction, I'm sure we're going to hear a number of definitions throughout the conference. I'm sure that we might have some meaningful and civil debate about how to approach it. But what I do believe is undisputed, and the reason why we are all here, and as the council indicated in its introduction, incivility, as we know, is all around us. It's a global problem, but it's a human problem. It's a moral problem. And if left unchecked, it may become so much part of our moral fabric that it can't be reversed. Because civility is a human issue and a moral issue and a global issue, everything that you hear during this conference or are about to hear during this conference has its foundation in what I have termed emotional civility. Emotional civility, I believe, is the root of authentic civility. And it requires us to dig deep and uncover anything that prevents us as individuals and human beings from reacting and acting with civility. Authentic and lasting civility requires that we take self-inventory. And it is only through self-evaluation that we can effectively correct the course of the deep-seated incivility that our world has experienced, is experiencing, and I'm afraid will continue to experience if we don't begin to embrace this paradigm. Because civility is a human issue and not just an esoteric concept, something that's on paper, our individual emotions can be a contributing barrier to collective worldwide civility. My new book, which is released today and at this conference, Emotional Civility, the New Standard for Global Success, introduces this emotional civility paradigm. And it discusses how to break down and prevent those emotional barriers that prevent us from engaging in true civil interaction. We all know that civility includes sharing our own beliefs and values with others through some type of engagement with the intent of severe respect and sincere respect towards one another. Emotional civility is the intentional awareness of one's own emotions and the work required as an individual to ensure that civil response is given to negative input or feedback. We all know that it's easy to act with civility if we're approached with civility. The challenge becomes when we're approached with incivility. How do we respond? Emotional civility is distinct from emotional intelligence. And some of you that are listening might say, well, how is emotional civility a new paradigm? We have emotional intelligence. Well, I believe that emotional intelligence is vertical. And it relates to how you process your emotions and the output based on your own emotions. Emotional civility takes it a step further, and it's horizontal. And it addresses the impact of your emotions based on your response and based on the response of others. Practicing emotional civility requires thoughtful behavior and continuous refinement of our perception of what matters to us, but also what matters to others. It requires us to step outside of our own perceptions and our own beliefs and our own way of processing things in order to ensure that the listener, that the receiver is receiving it civilly. Emotional civility, rather, takes work to act with civility in the face of disappointment, discontentment, pain, grief, misunderstanding, whatever we're going through. Again, it's easy to act with civility when we are approached with civility. But what happens when we're vulnerable? What happens when we're grieving? What happens when we are facing an emotional situation? Oftentimes, our emotions trigger an uncivil response, and we fail to look at how that response will be received. And that is the work that the emotional civility paradigm requires us to engage in. Emotional civility requires us to understand that we as human beings have different perspectives. And we have different perspectives about what constitutes civil discourse and civil behavior. And emotional civility reflects the emotional capacity to understand that everyone processes information differently. Emotional civility takes the time to understand and not dictate your views. Emotional civility is the recognition of the need to act with civility and the commitment to do so, even when the circumstances scream otherwise. Emotional civility recognizes that disparities exist, but intentionally looks to build bridges and promotes and facilitates communication that addresses the attitudes and consequences of that disparity, thus leading to harmonious change and a sustainably civil society enjoyed and shared by all. As Russ alluded to in his comments and made very clear, we're not looking for just a moment. We're looking for a movement. We're looking for a continuous engagement in civil interaction. And emotional civility and the processing of our emotions will require us to do so. I believe that in this Urgency of Civility conference, as we walk through the subject matter, we will understand and learn that it is the time we begin to build bridges and eradicate division. There is a bridge that is built between individuals when applying this emotional civility paradigm, and that bridge ensures civil responses. That bridge can be built with understanding and tolerance and the components of civility, or that bridge can be obliterated with the issues that undermine true civility for all: racism, misogyny, privilege, inequality, inequity are just some of those issues that obliterate and undermine true civility. The concept and practice of civility cannot silence opinions and beliefs, but it requires openness. I believe that emotional civility and this new paradigm is the foundation of civility for all. In assessing the barriers to civility over the course of this conference, and certainly in the next session that will focus on these barriers, it will encourage all of us to work on our individual processing of information as we work to ensure that our responses are authentic and civil and promote positive and lasting change for all. In doing so, I encourage you to understand that there is a difference between equity and equality. And that difference between equity and equality must be considered in analyzing the impact of our responses. Equity and equality are the keys to civil response. And they are also significant barriers to true and authentic civility if not truly understood. And my hope is when we get into the panel discussions, we can have some of those conversations about the difference between equity and equality and why equity is the true key to civility in our world. It is only by addressing the root causes of incivility and unmasking or removing the band-aids that prevent us from having transparent discussions that we can truly begin to address the barriers to civility and develop meaningful solutions. And that's why we're here. And that's why the Urgency of Civility is the title of this conference. But just as removing a Band-Aid from a scab can be a little painful, removing the Band-Aid from this area of transparency can cause some discomfort. And as we progress through this discussion over the next few days, and as we begin to examine our personal biases, and we begin to examine our personal barriers, before we can truly address what it means to be civil, I challenge you, and I state very strongly that we must reject all forms of prejudice, discrimination, including those based on race, gender identity, sexual orientation, privilege, or any other difference that have led to misunderstanding, hostility, and injustice worldwide. Without the ability to engage in difficult conversations, it is impossible to advance ideas or progress or embrace free expression of thought and speech. It is the intertwining of humanity that requires an open mind in order to achieve civil discourse. Breaking the barriers of civility requires that we welcome diversity of thought and political beliefs. Breaking the barriers of civility requires that we use principles of positive conflict resolution. Breaking the barriers of civility requires that we treat one another with courtesy, mutual respect, even when we don't understand. And breaking the barriers of civility requires that we have to be willing to listen. Breaking the barriers of civility requires that we have to move past our own biases. And the barriers of unspoken and inherent biases must be broken for true civility to prevail. We know that not everyone will respond with civility to civility, but my goal as a thought leader and civility scholar is to encourage us all to continue to use civility and make an effort to respond with civility, even in the face of the harshest circumstances. And that is the emotional civility paradigm. We also need to begin to think of civility as continual and non-negotiable. It is not something that we turn off and on when it's convenient for us. Commitment to do what is right must prevail in our society. Civil policies must be created, and we cannot simply continue to offer lip service to those situations that require civility. We also cannot use an old environment for new policies. Differences in opinion will occur, but we must remember, and this is key, that diversity is not adversity. We must cry out for civility over uniformity, and all too often we underestimate the power and true virtue of civility in our world. Remember that words matter. Words empower, words create, and we must choose them wisely. Emotional civility requires that you intentionally understand and are conscious of the effect of your words and your tone and your mannerisms that they have on others. The more power that you have or position you have, the more conscious you must be about their effect. With great power comes great responsibility. And that is true in the area of civility, and that is true in how we use our words. Passionate emotions must be harnessed and channeled through good manners and etiquette to civilize any debate in our diverse society and diverse world. Reckless and malicious expressions will lead to vilification and degradation of each other and our communities and our world. Our interdependence is the rule and not the exception. It is essential for us to have sincere insight into each other, which should lead to sustainable civility, resulting in harmonious existence. I challenge us all today, and even after this conference, to continue to work hard and with intentionality, to be part of a community where everyone feels valued and respected. Together, we are the community. Together, we are building on a long legacy of civility and responsibility. Together, we can break down the barriers that block us from living in a more civil nation and world. I thank you to the World Civility Council for finding that this is an urgent matter. And I thank you for this opportunity to introduce to you the emotional civility paradigm and to begin the discussion about how we as individuals break down the barriers to civility. So enjoy the conference, and I look forward to engaging in the discussions with you over the next 2 days and being part of the solution. And I believe I turn it over to Russ for our next panel.
Wow, Sharon, thank you so much. You've given us so many things to think about, how we can all build our own emotional civility. I look forward to, during this course of this conference, to get into more discussion about the difference between equality and equity and how we can build both. And you really challenged us to look inward and recognize and own our own prejudices and biases and how we can name them and keep them within proper check towards our fellow humankind. So thank you so much, Dr. Anderson. That was absolutely amazing and a great way to kick us off.